It's okay if it doesn't work out, and it's okay that you went through all that and it's something you're not passionate about. At least you gain those transferable skills and you know what you do and don't want. And I just want more students to be aware that it's okay to transition and change your career as many times as you like, as long as you're happy.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Career Hack, a podcast dedicated to assisting college students and early career professionals with entering the workforce and ascending the corporate ladder. I'm Brandon Amoroso, co-founder of Apex, a scaleless company that sends internships every week to college students that are searching for opportunities. And today I'm talking with Vivian Nguyen, who's a student grad recruiter at Capital One.
Hey Brandon, and hey everyone on the podcast. Super honored and excited to be here today.
Yes, thank you for coming on. Before we dive into some of the things that we want to cover today, can you give everybody a quick background on yourself and what your role really entails as a student grad recruiter at Capital One?
Yeah, so I have been in recruiting for over 4 years now, and I have the privilege of working both agency and in-house settings, which has given me like a well-rounded perspective on recruiting. Currently, I am a student and grad recruiter at Capital One, specifically recruiting for business analysts. As a first-gen grad myself, being the first one in my family to graduate college and enter the workforce, I've seen firsthand how transformative the right career can be. That's why I'm deeply passionate about helping others navigate their career journeys. I understand how daunting it can be, like, to find the right fit. And I want to be the person who not only help place great talent, but also empower them in their next big step.
When it comes to recruiting for that business analyst role, because most of the folks listening to this are looking for either that internship or that first full-time job out of school.
Yeah.
Does Capital One have like an internship program that feeds into that role that you're getting to select from as well, or are you oftentimes recruiting on campus and then people are starting that job as their very first role with Capital One? What does that typically look like?
Yeah, great question. Capital One do have like internships and full-time opportunities for new grads and students who are currently in school as well. I know like a lot, myself included, didn't know that Capital One offered this. They're more than just a bank. They do have like their tech side and opportunities for student and grad. We do go on campus to recruit, and we also do like meet and greets virtually as well. Yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Got it. And then in terms of those entry level positions, how much of it is like hard skills versus soft skills that you're looking for?
Yeah, those are great questions. Well, first I want to break down that there are many different. I'll say there's many different student grad opportunities within Capital One. So there's tech, business analysts, HR, finance. There's many different rotation program and internships. In terms of business analysts, hard skills are important, but also soft skills. Soft skills as in like, communication. Are you able to collaborate with others as well? It's a very collaborative environment within Capital One. So you'll be working with many different teams. So, communication, collaboration, and just being able to like innovate and think on top of your head. Those are like some important skills that we are looking for.
And then how much of like does GPA factor into it versus not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So GPA do matter. However, I think it's definitely more than GPA. We look at students holistically. Are you involved in on campus? Like, which organization are you involved in? Do you have leadership skills?
GPA versus not. Like how important is GPA truly? And you were mentioning on-campus involvement. Like that's something I've been hearing more and more because that's usually a question that we ask. Any of the campus recruiters or recent grad recruiters, and it seems like less and less of an emphasis is being placed upon GPA, though it does depend a little bit on what the role is and what company it is. But when I was hiring for my previous business, I really didn't care, where you went to school and nor what your GPA was. It was more
Yeah.
about a lot of the intangibles, the involvement, or if we were hiring for an engineering role or developer role, it was more about past work and your GitHub than it was you had a 4.0 like in school.
Yeah. Sorry, going back to the GPA. GPA do matter. It's like a benchmark. However, it doesn't hold weight to everything. Like, you're not gonna just because you have a certain GPA doesn't you're not gonna get the position right away. With our student grad
Yeah.
programs, yes, there's a GPA benchmark, but we also give out like an assessment to all students once they apply. And that assessment kind of it's like a virtual job tryout, give you a better understanding about the position as a student and vice versa, where we come in and understand like, are you a good fit for Capital One and the job itself? And then from there, you have like the interview process. And that also depends, like, are you going to do well during the interview process, like the casings? And are you able to elaborate more on your like experience and leadership as well? No, I think GPA do matter, but it doesn't hold as much weight. I think overall, like we're looking for experience in the way like, leadership skills and you as a holistically as a student.
Got it. And when it comes to, you mentioned that it's not going to get you the job, but it is sort of like a benchmark. Is there anything else in the resumes that, it's not going to get you the role, but like if it's not there or if it's poor, then it's going to remove you from that pile of even being considered for, that position?
I don't think like what necessarily like what would eliminate you depending on what you put in your resume, but what will help you stand out on the resume again is your involvement on campus, any leadership role. Also add in any experience or if you're involved in hackathons, any projects you have taken that aligns to the role that you are applying to. I would definitely add that in to help you stand out um, as a student or intern applying to jobs.
Has it evolved at all over the last 4 years as you've been in recruiting? Because I think based off of that timing, that did you start pre or post COVID? I can't remember the dates exactly.
Yeah, so it's crazy because I actually graduated and started right before COVID, and then two months later, COVID hit. So it's definitely different. Like, unfortunately, applying for a job isn't the same as it like back in the days when you could just like walk into a place and say, "Hey, I need a job," and I could start today. Like nowadays, there's so many more competition in the market right now, and it could feel like being a needle in a haystack. So there are definitely I recommend to like again like help get involved in your community. Put yourself out there and network, especially like on LinkedIn. Network and connect with people, even if you just connect virtually due to location. Just get yourself out there. You never know who you meet and any opportunities that come along the way.
When it comes to networking, are there any tips or tricks that you've seen work well when it comes to students being able to stand out?
Something I always recommend students when it comes to networking is have a pitch. When you talk to recruiters, anyone like from the organization, just prepare to pitch, like have a pitch for yourself. Who are you? What are you interested in, and what are you looking for in the position? And then when it comes to networking, get it like have a conversation, with a recruiter and just like kind of make a memorable impression if you can. And then get their contact, follow up with them. More than often, when you connect with these recruiter and associates from the organization, they can give you information, like, hey, this is when the application drops. Hey, we're going on an event on campus. Like the more you know, like the more opportunities that you'll know as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things I always tried to do when reaching out to anybody, whether it was like looking for a job or, trying to get a new client, is, in some way be able to provide some value in the other direction as well, versus just, purely asking for, the connection or, for something like a one-way transfer. And it's not always super obvious what you could, give or provide to that other person on the other end. But I also found it really beneficial to tap into the alumni network, at least when I was still in school. It felt like the sort of level of support that people were willing to offer, because I had that EDU email, because I was still a student, significantly greater than even 6 months after graduating, even though really not much has changed other than you were a student and now you're no longer a student. So I think while you're in college is actually probably the best and easiest time to be able to get your foot into the door, because you're not like super threatening. Once you graduate, it's, everybody thinks you have something to sell, or you have some like ulterior motive. Whereas when you're in school, it seems a lot more genuine.
Yeah.
And I found it a lot easier to get people to, respond to me and be willing to, go the extra mile,
Yes.
when it came to that.
Yeah, I highly agree with you. I think like now for student new grads, I taking the opportunity to network and get involved in campus, like it's probably the best time, like you said. And even if you miss your chance, because that's something as in first gen, like I had a difficult time to put myself out there to network when I was in school. And if you are like me, I would just like, again, to network and put yourself out there, like whether on LinkedIn or any job. I say LinkedIn because that's the common most platform that we use. But you don't, make a comment on someone's post. Share your thoughts, or even just post a hello on LinkedIn. You never know who would just like kind of reach out, like kind of like how you reach out to me. I think there's just like a lot of opportunity to network and connect on there, virtually as well.
Yeah, there's so many, automation tools that are out there now for LinkedIn, for email, for any of these channels. I mean, you have to also be careful with it, because quantity over quality is not always, the right thing to do, and it's pretty obvious when, I don't know, especially in email, you're one of 10,000 people that just got whatever was sent, and so you're really not going
Yeah.
to get a response, and you'd be better off reaching out to 100 more intentionally, because 10 of them will reply versus reaching out to 1,000 and only 5 of them are responding. But yeah, the LinkedIn like comment has definitely worked well, as long as it's genuine and
Yeah.
makes sense, versus just sort of reaching and grasping for something to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, I guess outside of that, is there anything that like stands out to you that you can recall over the last 4 years that somebody has done, and you're like, wow, like that was really different. That's something that I haven't seen before. Like when I had sent cases of wine and a handwritten note to people that I really wanted to talk to. And I think every single one replied except for maybe one, because who's not going to respond to a 21-year-old who just sent them a case of wine and a handwritten note? But is there anything that you've seen that has worked, really well and has stood out to you?
In terms of like networking, getting your name out there, would you say?
Yeah, yeah. Or somebody who you've hired in the past, or pushed the pipeline, and they had done something that was unique and not. I mean, it could be outside of networking as well, but somebody who used a little bit of creativity to stand out and push their way to the top of that pile, because the pile is increasing. It seems like it's been increasing for the last 2 years when it comes to at least the number of applicants that we're seeing come in for our positions.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yeah, there are a lot of competition. Like, how do you stand out when you network? I think what one student really like I remember, it's just like the ongoing communication. He was just like sharing with me. We weren't able to connect like on campus, but we he was like emailing me and setting up time for a coffee chat. He even kind of like looked through my LinkedIn and made a memorable connection. I think one of the first thing he brought up was like coffee, which is something I love. So we just like connected over that, like coffee. And that's just something I will remember because that was just like a genuine conversation, and not just like diving deep into like, you know, the industry or whatnot. I think just making that memorable impression and having that like ongoing communication throughout the year was what made me like memorable about this candidate.
Mhm.
Even when he got the job opportunity, we were able to connect like afterwards too. And I'm just still a part of his network and just happy that he had the opportunity and we'll be rooting for him.
When it comes to, you've just started with that first role, like you've gotten that position. You've obviously been in yours for 4 years. Are there things that you were conscientiously thinking about to set yourself up for success, once you first got started? Because I've heard, from a lot of students who start their first role, like they're not really sure, great, we've gotten the job now, but how do we stand out, make sure we're continuing to progress, especially when not every company has the most well thought out onboarding process either.
Yeah. So I know like getting that first job could be like nerve wracking and how can you do your best. But I think like just showing up and doing your best every day and then network and connect with like your teammates, your manager, and have that open, transparent communication, asking your manager, hey, like, what are your goals? Like, what is the current team goals? And how can you get the team there? Like, what are your thoughts? And have like a 30, 60, 90-day plan when you on board to the new role and kind of like and have a plan and share that with your manager and continue to just take initiative on certain continue to take initiative on projects and things that will benefit the organization and it shows that you genuinely care and that you want to succeed and help the company get there.
Got it. No, that makes sense. I like the 30, 60, 90-day plan too. We actually use that as a as a framework for how we would work with clients
Yeah.
at my previous business. I think
Yeah.
tackling everything in those 3 month sprints can be good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's obviously been a lot of talk about AI over the last year, um, and there's so many things out there when it comes to AI resume generation, AI cover letter generation, and then you have businesses who are using ATS systems that are also leveraging AI to sort and filter through the candidates that are coming in and actually applying. So it feels a little bit like both sides are using AI in these competing manners. But at the same time, oh, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like if you are a company and somebody applies and it's very clearly like all AI, it's kind of counterintuitive because businesses now are looking for people who are able to leverage AI, but they don't want them to apply, using too much AI. So is
Yeah.
there like a fine line that you would recommend to students when it comes to being proficient in the tools that are available, but not being overly reliant upon it and having it negatively impact your application?
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. I've noticed too, like definitely more this year than ever that a lot of students are using AI, especially interviews and projects, things like that, which is could be a good or bad thing. I mean, it's great that they are using the tools and staying up to date, but again, that's a little bit plagiarism. And I think you should be able to lay out like your thoughts, your own work, and then perhaps like use AI to see like what other ideas or what you are missing, but you're not like just straight up like copy and paste where a lot of students are kind of doing. And teachers, associates, they can tell because everything is the same, like the wording, the way things are like it's kind of obvious. And then when you even go to the interview, like your paperwork could be great, but when during the interview, when you're not showcasing that, like they can tell that it's not authentic either.
Yeah. No, we've had multiple interviews that we've gotten on where it could be even as blatant as the person is not the person that they were representing themselves to be, which is crazy to me because I don't know how the hell you would think you would ever get that job if you literally are lying about where you're from or who
Yeah.
you are. But then there's the less egregious of it where you know you represent that you know a lot more about a particular subject or a particular let's say coding language, but then you get into a live environment and it's very obvious that you actually don't. And
Yeah.
anybody can put a prompt into into
Yes.
chat GPT or whatever tool it is and have it spit out something that sounds slightly intelligent or coherent. So I think it'll be interesting to see how companies continue to evolve their interview processes to combat that. And I think it's going to actually probably lead to more manual work, at least a little bit in the beginning, because you're not going to be able to rely upon those answers that are being submitted by the candidate unless maybe there's some sort of, video interface that is, recording you and watching you. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses.
I definitely agree. I know with like Capital One, at least like we don't really use AI. Like we have that virtual job assessment that we give out to all candidates who apply. And that's kind of like showcasing, hey, like maybe you don't have the GPA benchmark, but you are able to do that job fit. And then after that, we do like one-on-one interviews, doing like a lot of casings. Um, yeah, and just kind of like it's more like authentic that way. Like even just doing the one-on-one and going through the problem, the case together versus just doing digitally. That's where a lot of students can use AI and cheat their way through, unfortunately.
So let's say everything's gone, super well. You've got three different offers. You're about to graduate. How are some what are some ways that students can compare and contrast those different positions? Um, because it's not always the case where you're just getting one job and you're obviously just going to take it because that's the position that you walked into. I know multiple people who they have to make that decision. They might have 3, 4, even 5 offers, and it seems like that's actually starting to happen more and more where there's like a 5 to 10% of the candidates are sought after by everybody, and then there's like the 90% that aren't as sought after. So let's say you're in that 10%. How do you figure out where you should actually go, what you should actually be doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always kind of like recommend like what is important to you, like the the job. How is the work culture for each organization? Is it collaborative? Is it like kind of helicoptering? Like get knowledge of like the work environment, the work culture of the organization that you may be potentially working for. Two, I know obviously compensation is a huge factor into this decision as well. But also think
Mm-hmm.
about like when it comes to that, like think about like the lifestyle that you want. Um, like overall, like your lifestyle, what would make you happy? And if the compensation, the work is also aligning to that. I mean, having 3 offers, that's amazing, but I also think you're going to be working at these organizations every single day. you know I think
Yeah.
knowing the people, the culture, the work environment, is there a work-life balance? A lot of organization, you may be working after hours or before hours. Like, are you okay with that? You know have a have a better understanding of the organization holistically. Talk to associates who are currently in the job, um, in the organization, and ask like what do they like about their job and how long have they been there. Also ask about career growth. Like are there career opportunities for you to transition or move up if that's something you're interested in. Yeah, I
Mm.
think those are like super important to kind of reflect on before making that decision. I think again, having 3 or 4 offers, that's amazing.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is your first job isn't your last job either. So,
Yes.
even if you do, I wouldn't say make the wrong decision, but let's say 6 months in, it doesn't pan out. Maybe you don't like that industry. Same goes for internships, because I know, I've heard a lot of times people are freaked out about the concept of, they took that internship, but they're not going to continue with that business because of, whatever reason it may be. It's not the
Hmm.
end of the world.
Yes.
It's not like 30 years ago where you started and ended your career with a
Yes.
company. I pretty sure I know very few people who have ever been at a company for longer than 10 years now. I mean, even 5. Most folks are hopping every 2, 3, 4 years. Um, so it's not
Yeah.
always it's not always a bad thing if the first one doesn't end up being what you thought it was going to be.
I agree. And I love that you brought that up because that's something I like always tell students that, hey, like, it's great that you have this and it's okay if it doesn't work out. And it's okay that you you went through all that and it's something you're not passionate about. At least you gain those transferable skills and you know what you do and don't want. And I just want more
Mm.
students to be aware that it's okay to transition and change your career as many times as you like, as long as you're happy.
Well, I appreciate all the insights, and thank you so much for joining us. But before we hop, can you let everybody who's listening know, where they could connect with you or Capital One online if they're interested in some of your roles?
Yeah, well, thanks, Brandon, for connecting with me. It's definitely a pleasure here. Definitely, if you're interested, connect with me on LinkedIn. I also do have a TikTok that I share different internships and students full-time role opportunity as well. But yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. My TikTok is Vivian and dot Win as in Win.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. For everybody who's listening, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find us at scaleless.ai and apexearlycareers.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.